It's one of those thrillers that, that's one of those incredible books that kind of takes you away, and you read it in one sitting because it's so powerful, it's so exciting, it's salacious, it's all the things you want in a good thriller. So with this movie, we've translated it. I think it's been translated beautifully into a script for the screen, and all the characters that you love in the book are just like elevated. It's through the 3D. We make these people come alive in a way that you might not expect, even as a fan of the book. Paul's incredibly fun. He's clearly knows comedy like not a lot of people do. And I think it's the reason I've always wanted to work with him. I thought it would be really interesting doing a thriller with him, knowing that he's completely capable of really producing, directing, creating anything. But the comedy never ceases to bubble up inside of him. And the moments that he sees that he enhances with just 3 words in his direction is unlike anything I've ever experienced. It is so wonderful having such a shorthand so quickly with somebody I've never worked with, knowing what he wants and trying things out. No take is the same as the last, or at least that's the idea, and that's what it feels like for me. And so we are making a meal out of every single opportunity that we have to show a different side or different angle of each of these very complicated scenes. And I love his set. He's quick, he's efficient, he knows what he wants, he's very passionate about the whole project, the whole story. And yeah, he just knows what he's doing. Expectations were high, and he's beat them. Every single day, there's a scene that I'm just in love with, and my jaw's constantly on the floor with like how much fun I'm having. I did say today, January 24th, that this is like on record as the most fun character I've played since Karen in Mean Girls. I think the thing about Sydney that makes her so perfect for this role is that like she's very excited about life. And I mean, you look at Sid and her eyes are just wide and curious, and that's kind of where we find Millie. Not that, she's a great actress, she can play anybody. Obviously, we have seen enough of her work to know that. But but I like the fact that she's just going from room to room, from scene to scene, from circumstance to circumstance, and just kind of adapting as she goes as Millie. And it's it's fun to watch. I think all the right elements are here. We've got them all. The script is chock full of the best, most interesting, most necessary parts of the book, and I think the audience, the fans of the book, will love this film. Cece, my daughter, is played by Indiana L, and she's supposed to be playing 7. She's about 10 years old and quite smart and very funny. I think audience will love how grounded and almost funny and kind of still unpredictable about this movie. Even if you're a fan of the book, the way things play out and the way it's being shot, it's still going to be an experience, a new experience, even though you kind of know the story. And another reason I love this project so much is that you haven't really seen these characters before. It they don't exist anywhere. I feel that way as an actor playing one of them. I can't really find anybody to mimic. And I think it's a testament to the writing of this script and the creation of these characters. And I'm sure I'm wrong, but as an artist, really fully, I am almost certain that there's a spin to these characters that you haven't seen. And it's really, really fun to play. It's just so fun.
I would probably describe The Housemaid as a psychological thriller about deception and trust and love. And Millie is looking for a fresh start. She starts to work as a housemaid and she uncovers some really dark, twisted secrets. I think that Frida's book, The Housemaid, resonated with so many people because she has such an amazing way at making books so relatable, but then also plays into many fears that we all have. And she ties such an incredible balance of like character and story and tonality. And you're on the edge of your seat wanting to finish this book. I mean, I read it in one setting, I could not put it down. And you don't expect the twists, which it's always fun when you're on this crazy ride when you're reading a book. When I first read The Housemaid, I could not put it down. I mean, I was in love with Millie. She was such a raw, vulnerable character. Uh, Nina was wild and fun, and I had no idea what to expect from her. And Andrew, of course, just becomes like this very alluring, mysterious character that you're not quite sure what his intentions are, but you want to find out. And I loved it. I was drawn to Millie because I feel like for the first time, I have a character who knows who she is in the beginning. Like, she does go through quite a transformation and she has a crazy journey in her life, but she's always, from a very young age, known that she is strong willed and powerful and she's gonna get dirty and she's gonna take whatever hits her in life. And she's raw, but she's not afraid to stand up for what she believes in. And having a character that just has that willpower within her and doesn't need anybody else to discover it but herself is a really beautiful thing to play. When I first read one of the first drafts of The Housemaid, I was blown away by how well it followed the book. Because I mean, I'm a huge book reader and I understand when you watch a movie and you're like, oh no, they changed this, they changed that. Like it's hard. But I think that Rebecca did such an amazing job at really following the book to its core and the characters and story points. And I've always been like a huge fighter for story points as well that have come from the book. And I'm for the fans. Like, I want to make them happy. I came on as an executive producer of The Housemaid about a year ago. There was already a rough draft of the script out and it was floating around, and I read it and I was really drawn to it. And I knew that there was definitely something really incredible there. And I was a huge fan of the book already. I knew that people would be dying to see this on screen. And so I talked to Todd and everyone who was already involved, and we kind of got together. We started building out the package and who we wanted to direct and star alongside me in it. And I love being able to be involved in the creative process and also just like the business side of it and learning behind the scenes and uh, how projects get put together. Having Frida's support in the film, of course, is always just absolutely incredible. And she's so excited to see her baby come to life. And she's been so supportive of the film and the casting and the whole entire process. And whenever you have basically the dreamer, the maker of it all, just be really supportive and on your team, it makes everything feel better. So Millie's journey is quite an interesting one. She is quite a survivor. She has to learn to confront her past and uncover truths that might be scary. And she learns how to be resilient, even more resilient than she already is. And she becomes a protector. Working with Amanda has been a dream. I grew up being the biggest fan of her, and I feel like I am in some surreal world right now, working alongside her and like stepping out and being in a scene. I'm like, what is happening right now? But she is phenomenal. She is so much fun, and she is bringing so many layers to Nina that every single take is just completely different and just wackier than the other. And it's so fun just seeing her bring the character to life, and I'm having an amazing time. Indiana, who plays Cece, is the sweetest little girl. I am loving working with her. She is a fireball of personality, and she is bringing Cece to life in such a fun and crazy way. And it's always fun being able to work with like kids on set because you never know what they're gonna do, and she knows every line. She is so on top of it, and it's amazing to work with her. I love it, and I really hope to be able to work with her again. I can't wait to see what she does with her career. The hair, makeup, and costume team on this film have been so collaborative and amazing. Uh, we've really built Millie from the ground up. I mean, I really wanted to make sure that it wasn't like Millie was changing her outfit every single day because she didn't have that. She has one pair of jeans, maybe two, a couple tops that she switches the cardigan with the tank and the tank with that cardigan, two pairs of shoes, nothing else. It's whatever she can fit in her duffel bag and she might have thrifted or had from before. And they were totally game for that, which I was really happy about. Nothing's new, nothing's crisp. And then for my hair and makeup, like Millie's not the kind of girl to go to the drugstore and get tons of makeup and like wake up and do her hair. So I wanted everything to be super natural. So just kind of like not really wearing much makeup and just letting my hair do its thing. Working with Paul is so much fun. He is the sweetest gentleman I have ever met. And he has such a great vision for this project. He's a huge fan of the book, and I think that he's going to bring this thing to life in a way that no one can even imagine. He wears a different suit to set every day, and I love it. I mean, you can just tell he respects what he does and his cast and his crew and his fans as well. Fans of this book can expect, hopefully, everything that they want to expect from it. They can expect twists and turns and love and passion, some not so much passion, darkness, a housemaid, a Nina, a Cece, and an Andrew.
Working with Sid is fantastic. She's a great actress and she's hyper present and she's a lot of fun on set and knows her character very well and knows the story incredibly well. And in terms of how she shows up on a producer, I mean, she's you can tell that she just really cares about what this film aims to be and is very intentional with her vibe and her approach to Millie. And as far as her character Millie, I would say that yeah, Millie is you know, she's a girl who's kind of lost and a woman rather who's kind of lost and trying to find purpose and direction and consistency in her life after, you know, what she's gone through. And she unfortunately gets thrown in the worst possible situation to find that. But hopefully, you know, through the difficulty, she comes out on the other side and finds it, you know. But yeah, Sid's the best to work with. Working with Amanda has been a blast. She's just very unpredictable, and she allows herself to just let it rip and she's so free as an actor, and she in this role really gets to like lose her mind a bunch and be emotionally all over the place and on such a roller coaster. And then myself as Andrew, I'm sort of there to hold space and just try and anchor her in these moments. And it's just a joy to watch her let herself go off the deep end and lose her shit. It's a lot of fun. And she does it so well. And again, just as Sid, you know, she has such a clear vision and really cares about what she's doing. And I think that's the best thing you could ask for. The worst is you know, apathy. So to have a bunch of actors who really care about what they're doing and care about the story and just want to make the best film possible, and you know, she definitely has that vibe, and so does Sid. Michele is perfect for it. He's insanely handsome and so sweet, and has this sort of really strong and steady vibe about him, and also I think he was a gardener. So like he's like a really good looking Italian man who was a gardener, and you literally could not pick a better person for that role. It would be a crime if it wasn't Michele. Oh man, working with Paul is a dream. He's honestly, and I know people say this, oh, this is the sweetest guy. Genuinely the sweetest man I've worked with behind a camera. His energy is so safe, and you never feel like you need to act for him. You never feel like you need to do anything for him. He gives you the space to do your job, and very encouraging. And I personally, as an actor, love feedback. So like I know like not all directors do that, and sometimes you're doing takes and I guess I don't know if this is working. Is this way, you know? And he's the first guy to tell you when it's working and encourage you and sort of push you in the right direction. And for me, it kind of like speaks to the little kid inside of you, where I'll come up with a line and he's like, "Oh, I love the line. I love this amazing. Did you try this?" And now you have this. Now you have this creative flow, and now you're inspired, and now you're you know, allowing yourself to discover things in the moment rather than feeling like, I hope this is what he wants, or what it's all about you and what you bring to the table. And yeah, it's been such a joy to work with him. It really has been. When I read the book, I saw a world, a very specific world and sort of a specific tone, and I think that we've somehow managed to really bring whatever that is to life, for what that's worth. I'm sure everybody has their own interpretation of it, but I mean, the house, the casting, like the relationship that Millie and Andrew have, and Nina and Andrew has, like there's these very specific relationship dynamics and these very specific tones. You know, like the tone between Millie and Andrew is very different from the tone between Nina and Andrew. And just for what I perceive from it and what I imagine from it, I feel that we really took that and really, they nailed it. I mean, the production design, I mean, everything. I think they really brought it to life. I really think people are going to love it in terms of the world that we've created.
I think what people likes usually is the secret behind the story, you know? So when there's a secret, people are, and when there's a secret, people are curious, and that's the main point. Enzo is a strange character, you know. It's a character that connects all the characters all around. So it might seem who's a strange guy in the house, and this is what I actually loved about this character. I truly believe Paul is one of the most gentlemen I've ever met in my life. He's super professional. He's super kind and sweet, and I really like to work with him. He knows how to work and get in touch with the actors, you know, right before the scene, right before the check, and yeah, I feel blessed. You know, I feel blessed to have worked with him again. Sydney is one of the most sincere person I've met in this industry. She's she's so much fun. She's really polite, and I like polite people. And I'm having so much fun because she's real. Amanda she's uh, she's super talented, super talented. She has this deep green blue eyes, and she's super sweet as well. I'm having a great experience as well with them.
Cece is pretty mean to Millie, at least. And I think she doesn't really trust anyone. She has a mind of her own, and she lets her intrusive thoughts win. I'm Cece. I'm Nina Winchester and Andrew Winchester's daughter. Nina's my mom. Andrew's my stepdad. And Millie comes to work for us in the household and help with cleaning, the cooking, and generally maybe babysit Cece. I think when I first read the script, I noticed how kind of observant Cece is. And when you read the script, or the book, because I've heard in the book, she's kind of always in the background listening to the conversations. And she's kind of like that in the script too. She's really mysterious, and she has just, I don't know, something about her that I just really love playing her, and I was so excited to first play her and meet all the characters and have a really fun time with this. He really paints a picture of what he wants the scene to look like, and how he pictures Cece, and how he pictures Andrew, and how he pictures Millie and Nina. And I think that he builds a picture, and he just shows everyone what he sees in them and how he wants them to act. And he's so open-minded to all my ideas, and lines that I want to try, or he's added some lines for me, and I actually really do appreciate that.
The Housemaid is about a young woman played by Sydney Sweeney, the role of Millie, who is going in for a job interview. She's a little down on her luck, living out of her car, and desperately needs this job, and goes to see Nina Winchester at the Winchester house. Rich family, has an interview. It's a great interview. Mrs. Winchester just seems like the greatest boss ever, and she gets the job, and then everything goes horribly wrong. Everything I do, I try to make as fun as possible. This is a pretty dark movie, but the fun comes from how extreme it gets. I always describe it as a Nancy Meyers movie that's gone horribly wrong. And that was how we kind of faced everything from the production design to the whole way that we played it. And it's deliciously fun, I would say. Yeah, the script had gotten sent to me, and I thought it was really fun. And then I read the book and really fell in love with the book, and was able to then go in with our writer Rebecca and say, "Oh, I think these things from the book that aren't in the script right now, we need to put in, because I think these are our water cooler moments, and these are the moments that people will really find very visceral." And we did that. Look, I've done a bunch of things now that are based on books or pre-existing material, and everything has a fan base, and there's something very terrifying about that, because you have to walk the line between fan service and bringing people who don't know the book or the property itself in, and making it work for, everybody, even the people that know it so well. I don't know if you always want a just word for word, representation of what you liked. You want to be surprised at the same time, and yet you don't want to mess with what works. So it was fun to be additive to this story. I've been a huge fan of Sydney's for a while. Ever since I saw that movie Reality, I was just like, she is really something. It was like, God, I'd love to work with Sydney. So when this project came to me from Lionsgate, who I was just finishing Another Simple Favor with, Great script, and Sydney was attached. So I'm like, I'm in. But then we had to figure out, who was going to be Nina. And, I've always been such a fan of Amanda's, and just the talent between that matchup between Amanda and Sydney, I just knew it was going to go through the roof, and it does. I mean, the performance they turn in. And then Brandon, his name came up, and I go, well, I want to meet this guy. And he came to lunch. The minute he was walking towards my table at the Tower Bar, I was like, oh, like, I'm in love. Like, he's this big, handsome, charismatic guy, and he sits down and he's funny and he's really into the idea of this role, because this role takes a lot of twists and turns, and some of them don't make you look so good. And he's like, yeah, I want to do all this stuff. So within 5 minutes he had the role in my head, and then I just walked out like, we gotta nail him down now. So that was great. And then Michele, I worked with on Another Simple Favor, and met him in Rome when we were casting, and he was just the perfect for the role of Dante. And I just absolutely fell in love with him. So yeah, when I read the role of Enzo, it's just like, I said to Frida, did you write this for Michele? Had you seen his other movies? And she goes, no, it just happened to be, but he's perfect for it. And so he came in, and it was very kind to do it. The role of Millie is great. First of all, when I read the book, you're like, all you can think of is Sydney really in the role. I couldn't envision anybody else in the role, honestly. And but it's a tricky role, because she's coming in, when you meet her, you have to think she's just a sort of like innocent girl who's down on her luck, who's very earnest and and nervous. And throughout the course of the story, you really find out this crazy past that she has. And what I needed is an actor that could bring that innocence through so much of the story, through, the whole first half of the movie. You just go like, oh, she's sweet and kind of, not the smartest person, but she's just earnest and all this. And then once the twist happens and it cracks her open, then you realize how complex this woman is. Amanda, now I can't envision anybody else being Nina, because that's the hardest role in the movie, really, because, again, all my movies, I always like to, my favorite thing is like, you meet people and you almost make them stereotypes when you first meet them. So you're like, okay, I know this dynamic. And then you start unraveling the sweater and you're like, oh, what the hell? What is up with this person? So, Amanda really had to walk this line of not letting it be, too far either way. And so we had so much fun of just like, stare at her for a long time before you say this line, and just unnerve her with like, long pauses and just kind of weird smiles and, and then just a weird turn, and so that makes a joke, and then suddenly she doesn't. And it really was really masterful to watch Amanda do this. Working off of the Nancy Meyers movie Gone Terribly Wrong, it was like we knew, John, my DP, and I knew like we have to make the transition in this one location through light. So we're going to start everything to be very bright and pretty and colorful, and then just lights start getting dimmer as we go through. And then in the attic, what John did, which I was so in love with, is harsh sunlight. Because I'm not a fan of like thrillers or scary movies that all take place in the dark. To me, it's almost kind of a cheat. I go like, there's nothing scarier than like terrible things happening in bright sunlight and in well-lit rooms, because then it's just like, it's really, it's real life all of a sudden. And if you can scare people in a light situation, I think it's easier, or it's harder than scaring them in the dark, because you know what's around the corner. So it was just a lot of that. If you're a fan of this book, you are going to get everything you love from the book and a little bit more, and you're going to see the most amazing cast turning these characters that you loved on the page into real people, and you're going to have a deliciously fun, insane time.
I think talking about process for a costume designer is interesting for, understanding what happens behind the scenes. So I would get a script. I've been working with Paul now. I think we've done 5 movies together. So the process is that I'll read the script. I will break it down, think about the character, have my own feelings as an audience, and then reread it as a costume designer. And I then go to Paul and we talk about each character. He talks about who he's casting and we discuss the character. And, that feeds me with the fuel that I need to take to the actors, which then becomes, a significant process because often you'll hear them say, oh, yeah, now I see it, or now I feel it. They'll put on a costume. And it arms them with, a layer, additional information to play a character, which, I'm always in awe of. But I think throughout most of the movie, you just go, God, he's adorable. He's such a good father. He's so solicitous to his wife. He takes her, around, cares for her. There's this tenderness that you see, and a look of this, kind of very, I guess, mild, benign domesticity. It looks kind of perfect. I was interested in taking Brandon to a place kind of as an actor that he hasn't been, which was to kind of go very sophisticated New England. It's very funny. We put a turtleneck on Brandon and he actually said, I've never worn a turtleneck before, which was pretty cute. And, it sort of, it buttoned him up in a way and it put him in an East Coast way, and it was informative. Both of them are utterly brilliant, seriously. I think I have always tried to be open with all the actors that I work with in terms of their input, because they are, after all, going to play the part. So it's never been me entirely imposing a look, but both women had very good executive ideas. I was very influenced by the book. I mean, I read the book and the script at the same time, and the book is wonderful and the script is wonderful. And so I can't tell what informed what. I didn't really delve too much. I took what, sort of I remembered or was influenced and tried to do as much, keep as true to that as possible. But both are terrific.
The Housemaid is both a psychological thriller, it's a cautionary tale, it's got a little bit of humor in it, and it's a revenge story. All of those things together tonally put together this kind of beautiful, I'll call it a mishmash, but it really, it drives itself in the thriller genre. At its core, you have an assumption about people and what you believe people are just from the surface. And what the book does so beautifully, that we really hope to achieve in the movie, is upend those expectations. So when you're following a main character who you believe is one thing, and you're following another main character who you believe is another, and then we absolutely, completely, and utterly switch and shift those expectations. When reading the book, that to me was both mind-boggling from a literary sense, but also incredibly wonderful from a commercial sense. The movie is very closely related to the book, and it deals with a young woman named Millie, who we meet, and she's essentially, we'll call it unhoused. She's living in her car. She's desperate for a job. We don't exactly know why, but we know that she's in dire need of help. She gets an interview to work for a very upscale family in Great Neck, New York. Gorgeous mansion. They need a housekeeper and someone to help them with their young daughter. And she goes in for this interview, and we assume, and she assumes, that it's a job too good to be true. So after we read the book and fell in love with it, and sometimes this happens and more often than not it doesn't, the book became an absolute international sensation. It's between this one, the second book, the third book, there have been more than 7 million copies, billions of comments, famous people reading it. As a producer, the dream situation of how did a book that you read with your staff before anyone really knew about it turn into an absolute sensation? And how lucky are we that we get to cast Sydney Sweeney, Amanda Seyfried, and Brendan Sklenar in the 3 main roles. The first step, once reading a book like that, is, okay, who's the right person to adapt it? And every time this happens, you take a swing. We were fortunate enough to hire and work with Rebecca Sonnenschein, who had worked on a show that we all love called The Boys on Amazon. And this is not an exaggeration to say that in her very first draft of the script, and this never happens, ever, she wrote what we believed to be a movie. We read it and we said, wow, she wrote a movie. Now, Paul Feig is an unbelievable talent, multi-hyphenate, actor, writer, director. He has directed some of my favorite movies of all time, including Bridesmaids, Freaks and Geeks he created. He's just an absolute delight. And when we talked to him about what his vision was for this movie, he's famously known for comedy. And he's also done great genre blending in A Simple Favor and Simple Favor 2. And what he really, really wanted to accomplish in this was what he calls a Nancy Meyers movie that turns really, really, really bad. That when you're invited in as an audience, it's gorgeous. Everything is immaculate, everything in its place, and slowly we start to deconstruct that. Amanda Seyfried, who, gosh, I've been a fan of forever, since the Mean Girls days and Mamma Mia and The Dropout, and she's just done some incredible, incredible work. It's a role that was really enticing to her because she gets to play kind of various versions of herself, and witnessing it in real time, I'll say, witnessing it on set, it's unbelievable. Part of the goal for Elizabeth was to decorate the house and add elements to this house that if you look a little bit deeper into it, you can potentially find some clues and secrets to some of the ill-fated backstory of the Winchesters. Some of the artwork, while beautiful on the outside, if you really look at it, has some disturbing images inside of it. And that across the board was the design in totality of what we wanted for this house, that on the surface of things, everything looks beautiful. But if you look a little bit beneath, there's harm under there. That's how our characters are. That's how the house is. That's what the lighting's going to look like. That's what this movie's going to feel like. We're going to invite you in, and then we're going to slowly scare the hell out of you. The beauty of Freida McFadden, the author of The Housemaid, is even though she has in her own right been an accomplished author in the past, she has also this career, thriving career as a Harvard grad in the field of medicine. All the thrillers that she had written before really dealt in kind of the world in the medical world. So when she wrote The Housemaid and we read it and fell in love with it and talked to her, the most important thing to Freida, and this is where I will give all the credit in the world to her, is she just wanted the movie to be dealt with properly as representative of the book. And she wanted it in the right hands, and she really wanted it to get made. Those were essentially the qualifications of getting involved with Freida. I trust you guys. I just want this movie made, and I want it to represent the book that I wrote. Sydney Sweeney, everyone knows who Sydney is. She's unbelievable, and frankly, we had to pinch ourselves a little bit that we got her because we couldn't have envisioned a more perfect Millie. She was the first choice, the only choice, and when she said she wanted to do it, we knew we had a movie. I think The Housemaid it's a unique blend where the audience doesn't exactly know what situation they're in. And I always love when you can keep an audience on their feet, keep an audience on their toes. So we're not quite giving them the full meal at the beginning, where we're hinting that there's a meal somewhere in here, but they have to work a little bit to figure it out. And my hope and my assumption, especially for those who haven't read the book, is that the audience is going to be blown away when they realize what the truth of this movie is. Now, for those who have read the book, I think they're going to be in for an extraordinary ride, because we're really, really honoring the book. Obviously, the medium of publishing and literary is different than the medium of visual storytelling, but we have really used the book as our blueprint of how to follow this movie. So I think for the fans of the book, there will be moments and things that they will recognize and love that people who haven't read the book won't know, but both will be fully entertained.
In terms of design, what is challenging was the idea of it all being mostly in one house, which is always, it's like easy yet hard, because it's like you have to find the location that will work for many different things. So that was probably the most challenging thing, was knowing going in that there was going to be this search for a home, knowing that we weren't going to build, that we were going to do it on location, and trying to find something that was both good-looking interior and exterior, which is always a little tricky to find both in one setting. But that was like something we were very interested in doing because of the way the shooting was and how it was all connected to each other. I think one of our biggest things that Paul and I developed, and what he was very interested in, is he didn't want the house to feel scary from the get-go, that it actually was supposed to feel, quote unquote, Nancy Meyers gone wrong. So we talked a lot about that, and how in the beginning it should feel very inviting, but if you look a little closer and you look at some of the details, you're like, ooh, there's something off about it. Even though it's very beautiful, it's like if you look too closely, you'll be like, ooh, danger lurks underneath. There's a progression throughout the movie in general, in terms of like how it's lit, from going from a more brightly lit look to a darker look as the story progresses. And we also created that with flowers as well. So we went from very like white fluffy blooms to more dark like maroons and spikier pieces, that kind of thing. I hope that people see this idea of quiet luxury is a big one, a big phrase that we were going for, like, or idea motif that we're going for, is this idea of quiet luxury, again, gone wrong, where there's this idea of like not all is well, and the idea of perfection, and like what does perfection mean and how it's actually totally broken. It's like got this sort of storybook feel to it. It feels like a fairy tale. It has its own character. And that was what I was really, really hoping for. I really wanted a house that felt like original and like its own universe. And I think we achieved that with our house.
I would say this film is about a woman who is ultimately a protector. I think that she is somebody who does what's right, even though it doesn't, like, it's not obvious to everyone else what's right. And I think she's got a lot of moral conviction, and she's protected a lot of people, and it hasn't gone well for her. And she's constantly stepping into like more and more complicated situations. But the one true thing is, when somebody's really in trouble, she's going to help them get out of it. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a thriller straight through and through. I think that the tone of the film, is certainly, like, from Paul and I's perspective, it's not a comedy. The tone of this movie is very serious. It is a straight thriller. But at the same time, Paul from day one has seen this as a Nancy Meyers movie gone wrong. And I think that's putting his mark on it tonally in a way that is really perfect. I think this whole film is subversive, even as a thriller. And I think that's what audiences love about the book and also love about the film, is that, you know, you think the story is one thing and the twists and turns keep on coming. And that's what makes it so entertaining to watch. So it's a very entertaining thriller. Paul and I have been looking to do a thriller for a while. Every year we talk about our favorite movies that have come out, and for a couple years running, Paul's favorite movies have been thrillers and horror movies, and I don't think people expect that from him. And I realized that he was sort of studying the genre as a director, and he was really ready to step into something that was more serious in tone and had those high stakes and had that thriller element to it. I think both working with Amanda and Sydney, they've been great collaborators and 360 collaborators, and that's how we like to work too. We like to make sure everybody's comfortable, and everybody's been so thoughtful about what goes into their costumes and wardrobe and the script, and it's just been a 360 collaboration, which is what I think will make a great movie out of this. Yeah, I mean, I think that you walk into a house thinking that Andrew and Nina are the perfect couple, and you start to realize that there's some tension there. I think you start to think that there will be a woman that comes between them, but it's so much deeper than that. And there's such a different history that you can never see coming. Our cinematographer, John Swartzman, is a longtime collaborator of Paul's. They actually went to film school together, and this is their first thriller together. And so John and Paul have worked a lot on the language of the film. Again, like with the Nancy Meyers concept, that's a very bright, well-decorated, everything has its place kind of concept. And that's how we shot the house to begin with. It's very bright and airy, and you're seeing a lot of wides. There's sort of nothing threatening about those rooms. You're taking in all the art and the beautiful details. But as we move through the film, they've been changing the sort of color texture, which I think is really beautiful, to seem a bit colder, and the space doesn't feel very warm. It starts to feel like there's greater distances between people, and then also counter that with like smaller spaces and feeling sort of like caught in certain ways. And we've shot a couple of really incredible scenes in almost pure darkness as the film goes on. And so I think, you know, the house starts out warm and bright and inviting, and it turns into that sort of creeping through the house at dark and at night and feeling terrified of what's around the corner. I think it's a thrilling, sexy, unexpected story. And even if you've read the books, I think you're really excited about the ride that you get to be on. It's all the twists and turns. It's all of it come to life. It's seeing those Easter egg moments and not knowing exactly what's going to happen next and how it's going to happen. That's so fun.
In any of the projects that I've worked on before that have been based on like novels, the interesting thing about this is that when reading the book itself, they reference the house many times throughout the book. So the house itself kind of becomes a character in the book. There's a lot of references to the way the house is decorated, the opulence of the house, the style of the house. And in the book, they describe the house as this very grand and concrete, very stark structure. We went in a little bit of a different direction, but it's definitely a character that runs throughout the novel. It's really fun to have a film where the set is so important. Obviously, I think the set is important on every film, but because it's referenced throughout the script, the characters talk about the sets, they talk about the house. There's certain elements that we had to figure out how to incorporate. That's always a fun challenge for me. You know, it's interesting because I think that the tone of the book was definitely supposed to be, you know, more foreboding and ominous, but Paul, the director, had very specific instructions that he wanted the tone of the film in the initial parts of the film to feel very welcoming and bright and open. So figuring out how to do a horror movie that simultaneously has a welcome atmosphere was an interesting challenge to incorporate into the set dressing. Another way that we tried to kind of create an unsettling atmosphere in the house was certain elements feeling either overpowering within the decor or clashing slightly. So in the dining room, we did a lot of patterns and very bold choices of artwork in there. There was the graphic wallpaper mixed with the very intense large-scale piece of art that's hung on the wall, mixed with the other very bold, bright blue piece of art that's above the fireplace. And, on a technical level, these elements clash, but that was purposeful because it helps convey this unsettling nature to the film. Something that was really important to Paul was that he wanted the house to feel welcoming. He didn't want the film to initially start out as being already off the bat like a creepy horror film. He kind of wanted to do a more unusual take on it where the house feels welcoming. He wants Millie to want to work there. Nina is supposed to appear as this very friendly, woman who Millie gets so excited about working the process. And I think that's very similar to what happens in the book. And Paul really wanted to convey that. And because of that, we tried to make the initial spaces that Millie enters the house have a more welcoming atmosphere. The foyer and the kitchen and the great room are all pretty bright. There's the kind of more unsettling elements that we bring in are reserved for rooms that she sort of enters later in the film.
Gosh, I always kind of describe it as a personal horror story because it's about this young woman who is kind of living at the edge of society through no fault of her own, and she finds this safe harbor with a woman who seems to have the best intentions, but once she's working for her, she sort of finds that she's in a more dangerous position than she was to begin with. I love the book. It's so good. And it's kind of one of my favorite genres. And I would say, it's kind of like a modern Gothic thriller. And I kind of loved English class, in college. So I can draw a line from this book from Jane Eyre to Rebecca to Gone Girl to The Housemaid. I think it's an amazing it fits all into those classics, And so I was on board. I actually the only conversation I ever had with Frida was before I started, we had a Zoom. So we just talked about the book a little bit and we just got to know each other a little. And she's like, I trust you. I'm like, oh, thank you. I want to do right by your book. So that's kind of the only conversation we had. And then I think as we were getting closer to making this movie and the book had really blown up, people love the book. It's a huge, huge seller. I can't imagine writing something like that. People love so much. But we kind of went back and really mined it for more of make sure you haven't left any book moments behind that can fit into this sort of cinematic structure. Yeah, Millie is such a great character. She's really funny and she's sharp. And she's, beautiful and she's really strong. And she has this sense of right and wrong that she's willing to fight for, no matter the cost. I love Millie. She has a very similar sense of humor to me. Sydney is she's just kind of embodies all those things. She's so beautiful, but she's also kind of got this steeliness, and I mean, she is Millie. When I'm like, oh yeah, that absolutely, it's perfect. I think Nina, she presents as this really warm and caring person, but she's also, you can see that she's worried about being she's self-conscious about wanting to be the perfect wife and mother. And so when she starts to sort of unravel, you get the sense that those anxieties and those insecurities are kind of driving it. It's a tricky role. And Amanda is such an exceptional actress. She has that incredibly warm and buoyant and fun side and warmth. You want to be around her. But she also has this ability to sort of portray this sort of coldness and there's an unhinged quality that she tinges everything with. So she's really an exceptional actress. This idea that you often have a person in your life who seems to be one thing, and they seem to be a good person, and then it all flips on its head and you realize they're not at all what they said they were, that they're a dangerous person, that they've betrayed you. And that is also, I feel like, a kind of a theme in the book that the characters, both Millie and Nina, go through. I think the genre of modern Gothic is very much about the house itself, you know. That's why it reminded me so much of Rebecca, you know, of Manderley. The house becomes this character. It's kind of this showpiece, and it's also a prison. It's a status symbol, and it's a place of danger. But it's not dark and gloomy. It's bright and sunny in a lot of spots. And so it's just this interesting sort of space to play in. He's amazing. He's so funny and charming. He's almost like, when people are like, what's he like? I'm like, he's exactly how he seems. He's so lovely. Yeah, we worked really quickly on the script because it came together. I'd written a draft, but once it was like we're going into production, then I had, maybe 6 weeks of collaboration with Paul. And he is such a super fan of the book that a lot of things that we talked about, besides sort of very logistical things, were like really mining the book for even more moments. I think he memorized the book. So yeah, he really encouraged us to go back and like find as many details as we could to organically put into this version of the story. That's kind of like, he just loves the book so much. It's a lot of things at once, which is amazing. It's scary and it's sexy and it's fun and it's funny and there's a sense of triumph at the end. So I think all those things really take the audience on a ride. It's a little old school, it's an old school thriller in the best ways. We've all had that boss who turns on us. We've all had that person who turns on us. We've all been desperate to keep a job. We've all been desperate to get out of a situation. And this story is all about these incredible twists and turns, but they're really an emotional journey. So it's really about the characters. Frida created such great characters. Like, if you didn't love these people, if you didn't root for their success, then none of the twists really matter. And they're just very fully realized characters from the novel. And I wanted to help bring those to the screen, by picking all the right moments. But I think it really is about, you are on Millie's side, and then you're on both of their sides. So it's kind of like shifting expectations. You don't know quite who to trust. You don't know who's the reliable narrator here. It really keeps you on your toes, and that you're totally emotionally connected to all these characters at some point.